Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This week is a very special video because we've got a special guest from Sky Sports and Talk Sport. His name is Kweku Afari. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kweku Afari. Like you said, I work for Talk Sport as a producer, and I do a bit on air as well for them. And then I work as a freelancer for Sky Sports and do a bit for ESPN as well. So yeah, just doing a fair bit in the sports media kind of world. Haven't got into it in December 2020. So enjoying the journey, enjoying the path, and love talking about footy.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely have that in common, the footy bit, for sure. We're going to do a start, sub, sell video today. The rules is basically that you get 3 players, you pick one that you start, one that you sub, and one that you sell. Pretty self-explanatory. Do you understand that? Is that all good?
Yeah, all crystal clear, mate. Excited.
All crystal clear. Let's get straight into it. There's some really tough ones, to be fair, in this list. When I was making it, I wasn't even too sure. So the first one, we've got Hazard, Salah, and Alexis Sanchez. This is all at their peak, if you want to say.
Oof. Okay. All right, I'm going to be biased. Obviously, I'm a Chelsea fan. And I think people forget, obviously, it's not gone well for him at Real Madrid, but Eden Hazard, when he left Chelsea, was one of the best players in the Premier League. And he was one of the best players in the Premier League for the whole time he was at Chelsea. So I'm going to start Hazard. He has to start for me. He's one of the all-time greats for both Chelsea and an all-time Premier League great. I would bench Mo Salah. It's a tough one. If I took my Chelsea hat off, maybe Mo Salah would start, but he's an incredible player. We know how good he is and how good he's been for Liverpool, the team you support. And he's consistently scoring goals. I know this season's not necessarily been the most prolific for him, but I'm sure he'll come good towards the back end of the season. So yeah, I'd bench Mo Salah and I'd sell Alexis Sanchez. And again, people forget how good Alexis Sanchez was when he was at his peak at Arsenal. Because it didn't go well for him at Manchester United, but he was a top player. But out of those 3, I think he just comes in third. So I'd start Hazard, I'd bench Mo Salah, and I'd sell Alexis Sanchez.
See, with my Liverpool hat on, it would be start Mo Salah. As you said, it's a close one between the two of them. It's like Hazard's a lot more appealing on the eyes, you'd say, like the eye test, as people say. But Salah has better stats. But then Hazard, as you said, when he was in the Premier League, he was up there for like the Ballon d'Ors and stuff. He was like best player in the world at times, as was Salah. But then it's so different. That's the thing. People, as you say, people forget that Hazard was so good because of his drop off with injuries at Real Madrid. So I would start Mo Salah, I'd bench Eden Hazard, and then I'd sell Alexis Sanchez. Again, Alexis Sanchez, unreal player, but just a bit behind the two of them, I'd say, is the main thing. No disrespect to him, of course, but he's just not as good as the other two, I'd say. That's what it is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Obviously, Alexis Sanchez, like you say, he was great. Unfortunately, in the period that he played for Arsenal, I think he might have picked up an FA Cup or 2, but he didn't really win. He never won a league title like Salah or Hazard. And Arsenal were in and out of the Champions League, so he didn't really get to show what he could do on that stage either. So, yeah, as great as a player as Alexis Sanchez was and is, out of those 3, you'd have to sell him and start or bench one of the other 2, depending on who you support, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. And then moving on, this is a more like a youngish player sort of thing. We got Mbappe, Haaland, and Vinicius Jr.
Oh, difficult. That's an interesting one. Mbappe, Haaland, or Vinicius. Okay, this is difficult. So I would start Mbappe.
Ooh.
I would bench Haaland, and I'd sell Vinicius Jr. It feels so harsh having to sell Vinicius Jr., who's really coming into his own for both Brazil and Real Madrid. But Mbappe, for me, is next up. Obviously, everyone talks about the Messi and Ronaldo generation. I think Mbappe versus Haaland will be the next conversation people will be having. Mbappe can do a little bit more than Haaland. I think Haaland's a pure goal scorer and can score all types of goals. He's a archetypal number 9. But Mbappe can dribble the ball, he can pick up a little bit deeper, he gets involved in passages of play a little bit more than Haaland. And he's already got a World Cup on his resume. I know that the Champions League is the thing that everybody at PSG wants to win, and I do think he'll pick up a couple of those in his career. He hasn't done so yet. But I just think Mbappe is just a precocious talent, and he's done it since he's been at Monaco, moving to PSG. And I know the French league, people kind of deride it a little bit for being a bit weaker than the other top leagues in Europe. But if you look at Mbappe's record in the Champions League and the amount of important goals he scored, and then you look at what he's done on the international stage, I think that he deserves to start out of those 3. like I say, Haaland's exploits are well documented. We've seen it firsthand in the Premier League this season. He scored an incredible amount of goals in a short amount of time. But I think he can do a little bit less. I think he's a little bit more limited as a player than Mbappe. And Vinicius Junior is quality. We saw how good he was against Man City in the semi-final of the Champions League last season. And he got the goal. Yeah, he got the goal in the Champions League final against you boys. So he's definitely on the way up. And I think he's going to be very important for Brazil at this World Cup, who are the favourites, in my opinion. But I just think out of those three, you've got generational talents in Mbappe and Haaland. And maybe Vinicius Junior isn't a generational talent, but he's just not as good as those two. So yeah, I'd start Mbappe, I'd bench Haaland, and I'd sell Vinicius Junior. What about yourself?
I'd actually agree with you 100%. I think obviously Haaland's an exceptional player, but I think I've always preferred Mbappe's all-round game. Like the fact, as you say, he can play on the wings, he can dribble with the ball. He's a lot more involved in link-up, gets more assists and gets the goals. And he's one of the quickest players I've ever seen, which is just frightening, to be honest. He's just rapid, which I think, as you said, his overall game just offers a lot more than what Haaland does. Haaland's very good at just scoring goals. I know it sounds stupid, but as a striker, that's obviously your main thing. But it works at Man City, but would it work at many other clubs? You're not too sure. But the fact Mbappe can do that and so much more, I think he just offers. And he has the World Cup, as you say, and a few league titles under his belt already. So, and then Vinicius Junior, again, exceptional footballer, as you said, done it for Brazil. Had a remarkable season last year at Real Madrid. It was sort of like his breakout season as such, I'd say. Like, he'd obviously been in the team a couple of years, but last year he really sort of showed the world what he could do. I sort of thought he sort of came out into his own a little bit because he was always in like Benzema's shadow a little bit. But last year he was sort of like the main man, you'd argue at times, especially in some of the later rounds of the Champions League, helping Benzema and obviously Rodrigo's and that in the late stages. But I'd agree. I'd start Mbappe. I'd sell Haaland. I'd sub Haaland and sell Vinicius Junior. It's obviously, you get a lot of money for any of them, to be honest, if you sold any of them nowadays anyway.
Exactly. And they're all quality players.
Oh yeah, it's a tough one, that one for sure. It's just personal preference. Like if you just said Haaland, I wouldn't disagree because it just suits sorts the team that you want to play. And next up, we've got like a Gareth Southgate sort of one. So we've got Reece James, Trent, and Kyle Walker.
That's that. Everyone's talking about right backs at the moment. These are good. These are tough because you're picking some Chelsea ones. So I've got to try and remain objective, but it's difficult. With Trent, it's interesting. I want to get your thoughts on him. He's a generational talent, and I feel like if Guardiola or Klopp were managing England, he'd start, no doubt about it. We've seen him do incredible things for Liverpool, but defensively, he leaves a lot to be desired, and it's been highlighted this season. I don't think he's been helped out by the revolving roster of centre-backs. Obviously, Konate's had injury issues. So is Matip, and Van Dijk's not necessarily looked like himself. And when Gomez has come in, he's not looked amazing. So I don't think Trent's been helped on the club stage, but I don't think he's helping himself either. It's a tough one. Kyle Walker, in my opinion, will probably go down as the greatest right back in Premier League history. People say it's Gary Neville, but I think Kyle Walker's just a better player and he's won a lot as well. I had this conversation yesterday at TalkSport, and I was like, if my life was on the line and I had to select somebody to play right back for me in a World Cup final per se, I'm going with the solidity of Kyle Walker because I know what he gives you. But obviously he's getting up there in age, and the thing that set him apart was his physicality, his pace, his strength. Maybe he's lost just a little bit of pace, lost half a yard. So I would... I would start Reece James. This is good. Again, I'll back Kyle Walker here, but I would start Reece James. I would bench Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I would sell Kyle Walker just because of his age. And the other two are just so much younger and maybe a little bit better going forward than he is. But I feel harsh selling Kyle Walker because, like I say, I think he'll go down to greatest right back in Premier League history. But the other two have got a little bit more to go in their careers, and they can give you a bit more going forward.
I'd agree up until I agree with the Trent thing. I think he's not helped himself, but I do think he's a bit of a scapegoat. Like obviously, I watch Liverpool most weeks, pretty much every game. And if you watch the way we play, the amount of times Robertson's caught out of position, but you don't see it all over social media. It's not anything. But as soon as it's Trent, it's everywhere, and it's a meme. And they said Reece. Like as soon as Reece James scores, he's suddenly better than Trent. As soon as Trent scores, he's suddenly better than Reece James. And it's just like, you've just sort of got to leave them and just like, it's different systems. First of all, Reece James in the back five. I think that's quite a big difference. It helps defensively, and it allows him a lot more freedom going forward. Whereas Trent he's in a back four, but the way Liverpool play, he may as well be a wing back. That's just the way we play, like so high up the field, and he gets caught out. I 100% agree he's not the great defensively, but I think if I was Gareth Southgate and you're playing five at the back, I think he could do the best job at right wing back with one of the other two next to him as a right centre back. I think that would work perfectly, because I think Trent's probably England's best passer of the ball, I'd say, in the team. Maybe Harry Kane's probably up there as well, but he's also probably one of the most creative players. And I think it's just wasted. The fact he gets picked and doesn't even get a minute, I just leave him at home, let him train for 2 weeks with Liverpool. It's such a waste of his time, Tomori's time. I don't see the point in it. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. I get, if he's got a personal thing against him, just don't pick him. Don't give in to the media and just leave him at home. It confuses me. But as you said, Kyle Walker, I've sort of noticed in recent weeks, he's not sort of been at the level he has been for the last couple of years. He's still unbelievably quick and strong, but his position and stuff, as you say, he's lost that half a yard sort of thing. And Reece James is just the perfect combination of the two of them. Like, he's good going forward, he's strong, he's quick, good defensively. So obviously I've got to stay true with my Liverpool side. So I've got to start Trent. I'd bench Reece James, I'd sell Kyle Walker, but again, Reece James is unreal. And for England, either of them I'd be happy with starting, to be honest.
Do you know, like, he talks about Robbo being out of position. I think Robertson is interesting with Liverpool because none of your defenders have been on form this season. It's been an unfortunate start for you guys, and obviously Robertson's been benched in recent weeks for Tsimikas, and there's been some calls from Liverpool fans to maybe start Tsimikas a bit more going forward. But what Robertson does give you is that endeavour. He always looks like he's trying, and maybe because he's a little bit less talented than the other players in your team. But when you see Trent walking or you see Van Dijk walking, it's very stark. And so it might not necessarily be a case of they're playing worse than Robertson, but on the eye, it doesn't look great when you're walking. Whereas we don't
100%.
really see Robbo walking. So it's like, it's a difficult one. It's hard to assess it. And obviously, Trent's been asked to do a certain thing by Jurgen Klopp, who's one of the best managers in the world, who starts him every single week. So it's difficult to criticize a player who's done so much and won so much at such a young age.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, people forget that.
But he's so young. He is so young. He's won every club trophy there is to win, and he's been an integral part of that team for so long. But when you have high-profile errors, and I won't necessarily say that the goal that Vinicius Jr. scored in the Champions League final was Trent's fault. But when you're involved in those situations, it doesn't look good. And you know what Twitter's like, and people just latch onto it. And I feel like this Trent Reece James thing is the new Lampard Gerrard thing. There's rivalries in football, and opposition fans are always going to find the opportune time to banter their rivals. So that's just what it is. Trent's an incredible player, and I think he'll come good eventually this season.
Oh yeah, for sure. As you say, it's just the attitude thing is appalling. That when watching the Napoli game a few weeks ago, I haven't seen us defend that badly in weeks, but there's got to be an element of pride. Like, I play for Liverpool. Like, I shouldn't be walking back. I should be trying to. We're already 3-0 down, or whatever it was. I should be trying to stop it from being 4 or 5, whatever it could have been at that point. It could have been a lot more. It's just a bit embarrassing when you see him walking, because he must know in the back of his mind, people are watching this on TV. Like, they can see that they could probably scream at their TVs, going, "Run! Why are you not running?" Because fair enough, if he runs back and gets absolutely skinned, you know, that happens to every fullback. There's times where every fullback will get absolutely taken the mick out of. But if he's not even there, anywhere near it, then, as you say, he's not even trying, which then looks worse than. At least Robertson will always guarantee a 7 or an 8 out of 10, whereas Trent is either a 10 or you'd probably say a 4. That's the difference, as you'd say. And Tsimikas has been really good in recent weeks. I do really like him because he's got a crossing. He's probably maybe a bit better of a crosser than Robertson, but maybe not as good defensively. But again, he tries as much as well. He'll always give you a 6 or a 7 out of 10 as well. He's very consistent when he's come in, which I think is actually a slight concern of mine, because I do worry he's almost too good to be a backup. And there's a amount of time for someone who needs a left back goes, "Do you know, we could probably get him quite cheap. And because he's a backup, he'd be quite easy to soil lure away." But I don't know. I think they'll all come good this season. It just, once we get all the right players back, the right midfielders, I think it'll hopefully kick on a little bit, but hopefully anyway. Yeah. And then next one, we've got wingers. We've got Gareth Bale, Frank Ribery, and Neymar.
Tough one. I would start Neymar. I would bench Gareth Bale and I would sell Ribery. And I think it's difficult because Ribery doesn't. People kind of forget about Ribery and how good he was at Bayern Munich. Obviously, the tandem of Robben and Ribery, they were incredible for years and years. But playing in Germany, we just didn't get to see him that often. Obviously, he won the Champions League in 2013 with them. And he was a vital part of that Bayern Munich side. And I think he's still playing today. I think he's still knocking about somewhere.
Yeah. In Italy, I think, somewhere.
Yeah. And he was a great player, but I don't think he's on the level of the other two. The other two are generational talents. Gareth Bale, we've seen what he's done for Spurs. We saw what he did for Wales, or what he's doing for Wales. He's an incredible player, and obviously he was the catalyst for Real Madrid winning all those Champions Leagues. If you look at Real Madrid before Gareth Bale came, so he joined in the 13-14 season, they were searching for La Decima. They hadn't won the Champions League since the Dan scored that incredible goal. I think it was in either 2001 or 2002. And Gareth Bale comes in and they win 4 Champions Leagues. And so he scored important goals in finals as well. So, and one of the greatest goals of all time in the Champions League final against you boys.
Yeah.
So Gareth Bale's had incredible moments. What I would say about him is that the injury history is not great. Neither is Neymar's either. Neymar is a player that's injured a lot. But I just feel like Neymar, in terms of talent, is something that we have not really seen since Ronaldinho, when it comes to a player that can combine the skills and the flair with being effective. I feel like people have a bee in their bonnet about Neymar because of his attitude maybe and because of the diving, but we can't forget how great of a player he is. He's been great at PSG. He was great at Barcelona. The one thing that we haven't seen from him is being the main man. Maybe he is that for Brazil, and he was unfortunate to get injured in 2014 because I think Brazil maybe would have had a chance of going on to win that tournament in their own country. But I think he's an incredible player, and people will only appreciate how good Neymar was when he's done. I think behind Messi and Ronaldo, I think he is that guy, or has been that guy. Maybe Mbappe's kind of overtaken him. So yeah, I would definitely start Neymar, and I'd bench Gareth Bale, and I'd sell Frank Ribery. But again, 3 great players. What about you?
I'd agree with you, to be honest, 100%. I think Neymar is probably the 3rd best player of all time, behind Messi and Ronaldo. So he's, as you said, he's generational. He can do everything. And then Gareth Bale, again, has done it for Wales, for Real Madrid, and for Tottenham. So he's done it in probably a wider variety of leagues, I'd say, to Neymar, because obviously French league people, as you say, do knock it a little bit. But Gareth Bale, obviously, we're doing it at Spurs from left back at times as well. He was absolutely unreal to move them forward. And then Ribery, I haven't watched massively in my life watching Ribery. Never really watched Bundesliga. I vaguely remember clips of him for Bayern Munich occasionally, like when they used to beat Arsenal like 5-2 each time. But I'd agree. I'd start Neymar, I'd bench Gareth Bale, and I'd sell Ribery. But it is close because they're all such good players that, as you said, I don't think people really remember how good they are until they're gone.
I think Neymar's legacy as well will be defined. If Brazil win this World Cup, which I think they should do with the squad they've got, and he's one of the main players, I think that would definitely enhance his legacy for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because then he'll be up there with like the likes of R9, Ronaldinho, and like even Pele, to be honest, with the likes of Brazil. And then moving on to strikers, we've got Luis Suarez, Karim Benzema, and Robert Lewandowski.
That's a good one. I've asked this one before. This is a good one. Luis Suarez, or at their peak.
At their peak, yeah.
Because Suarez is kind of done now. Luis Suarez, Karim Benzema, Robert Lewandowski. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. You go first because I'm struggling with this one.
For this, see, I think at the peak, like, so you look at maybe individual seasons.
Oh, here we go. You're a Liverpool fan. You're going to say 13, 14.
That was obviously up there for Suarez. But then a couple of years later, when he won the Golden Boot with Messi and Ronaldo in the Liga, and with what he's won, he's got like the 2nd or 3rd most assists of all time as well, Suarez, I believe. Mm-hmm. So I think he's just behind Neymar in the generational list of like 4th, I think, in my opinion. So I'd start Suarez. And then between the other two, it's hard because Lewandowski recently has proven he can't just do it in the Bundesliga, and he's done it in Champions League, and he's now doing it for Barcelona. Whereas Benzema, he's probably found his form in like his later career more so. Like he's really got the numbers in his later career once Ronaldo's left. But obviously he's been integral to all the Champions Leagues they've won, pretty much. in the recent years. So because I've watched more of Benzema, I'd probably start Suarez, bench Benzema, and sell Lewandowski. But I'd have to have any of them in my team, to be honest.
See, I would. You've sold me on the Suarez one because, like, he is generational. Do you know anything about Suarez? I'm Ghanaian. And so 2010 World Cup, obviously, he handballs it on the line. Ghana go out the World Cup, and Uruguay progress to the semi-final, and that scarred me forever. So I've never really, and also he bit Ivanovic. So I've never really been able to embrace Luis Suarez for a multitude of reasons. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Suarez starts. I think I would actually bench Lewandowski and I'd sell Benzema. I love carrying Benzema, but he's been in the shadow and he was benefited by the fact that he was playing in an incredible Real Madrid team. And obviously the Bayern Munich teams that Lewandowski played in or has played in have been incredible. But like you say, I just think Lewandowski could do a little bit more. And I think he's just got more translatable skills. But it's a tough one. So yeah, I'll start Suarez. I'd bench Lewandowski and I'd sell Benzema.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the only issues with Suarez, why he might not be remembered as up there because of the issues with, obviously, the thing with Patrice and he's bit a couple of people, the Ghanaian thing. I think it does sort of dampen him a little bit. But if you just think on the pitch, he's up there as one of the best you'll ever see. But obviously, it comes with the whole package and what happens outside the pitch as well, which is obviously what none of the stuff he did was right. So that's the only issue. Like, I can understand why people would look at him and go, you can't like him because of so and so. Like, I wouldn't knock anyone for saying that at all. The next one, we've got a battle of the trios. So we've got Modric, Kroos, Casemiro, Busquets, Xavi, and Iniesta, and then your trio: Lampard, Essien, and Makelele.
This is easy. And again, I love Chelsea and I love those boys. Marco Essien is one of my favourite players of all time. So is Frank Lampard. And so it was Lampard, Essien, and who?
Makelele.
Okay. I would always start Iniesta, Busquets, Xavi. They are the greatest midfield trio of all time. It's not even really close, I don't think. You saw it for Spain, you saw it for Barcelona. They were just unstoppable. Then I would bench Modric, Kroos, and Casemiro. Like, we've seen how many Champions Leagues those trios have won. Like, Modric will go down one of the greatest midfielders of all time. I think it goes without saying, don't list off their credentials. And then the Chelsea one, like, they were amazing players in their own right. I don't think they're as established as a trio. I feel like Lampard and Messi maybe came into their pomp when Makelele was on his way down. So they weren't really like an established trio. So as much as I love all those players individually, I don't think they can hold a candle to the ones at Real Madrid and Barcelona, because they have defined football for the eras that they played in.
Oh yeah, for sure. Do you know what? I 100% agree with you. Said everything. I think that's quite a relatively easy-ish one. Like, unless obviously you're going off maybe trophies, and it might become a bit closer than what it is. But Busquets, Xavi, and Iniesta, for them 3 years for Spain and Barcelona, literally revolutionised football. You'd argue at times. Like, the three of them were so good at what they did, just passing it around, keeping the ball. They made football look easy. So I'd 100% agree with you. I'd start Busquets, Xavi, and Iniesta. I'd bench Modric, Kroos, and Casemiro, and then I'd sell the Chelsea lads, Lampard, Essien, and Makelele. And then moving on to another sort of young midfielder one, we've got Pedri, Jude Bellingham, and Tchouaméni. I think that's how you pronounce it, Tchouaméni.
Okay. So I'm not going to claim to have seen so much Tchouaméni. Obviously, when he was linked with clubs in the summer, had a look at him, and I've had a look at him subsequently to him moving to Real Madrid. So I feel like I haven't seen enough to really give him a fair judgment. I've seen a lot of Pedri. I've been keeping an eye on Pedri for a long time. And I've seen a lot of Jude Bellingham as well in recent months and years. So I would start Pedri, I would bench Jude Bellingham, and I would sell Tchouaméni. But again, I'm only selling Tchouaméni because I haven't seen as much of him as the other two. Pedri, I think, is generational. I think he's an incredible footballer. I think he's the next one of that. When we were talking about the Xavis and the Iniestas, he's the next version of that. I think Bellingham is an incredible player who a lot of clubs would be lucky to have. It's going to be an incredible bit of war for him next summer. Do think he's benefited from playing in the German league. I'd like to see him do it. Not necessarily just in England. I'd like to see him do it at Real Madrid or a Spanish team, or come to the Premier League and do it. But I love what I see from him. So I'll start Pedri. I would bench Bellingham, and I would sell Tchouaméni. What about you?
I'd slightly tweak it. I'd start Bellingham because I've probably watched a bit more of him than Pedri. And then same with Tchouaméni. I know I've seen, like as I said, I saw clips when we were linked with him, and he does look like an unreal player as well. And he's done really well at Real Madrid, I believe, since he's joined. But I'd start Jude Bellingham, I'd bench Pedri, and I'd sell Tchouaméni. But I think the three of them, if they're in the midfield together, that'd be unstoppable. But for years to come, they'll be up there for years.
Well, Real Madrid are potentially looking at Bellingham as well. They've already got Camavinga, they've already got Tchouaméni, and if they get Jude Bellingham, they'll have 3 of the best centre midfielders or best young centre midfilders in the world. So
that's their midfield sorted for the next 12 years, if not more, which is just ridiculous. And then the penultimate one, we've got the obvious one: Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Paul Scholes.
All right, easy. I'll go quick with this one. Start Frank Lampard, bench Steven Gerrard, and sell Paul Scholes. Everyone was talking about how great Paul Scholes was. I'm telling you, I was there. People were not saying that when he was playing, and maybe it's because people didn't understand the role that he did. But like, he was a baller. He was absolutely incredible. He did multiple things for his side. But Lampard, you can't. The numbers don't lie. I'm always going to back Frank Lampard. Gerrard, if you ask any ex-pro who's played against him or with him, he is an animal. And in poor Liverpool side. So yeah, I would start Lampard, I would bench Gerrard, and I'd sell Paul Scholes. What about you?
I expected that, to be honest. I'd start Gerrard, bench Lampard, and sell Scholes. Again, I wasn't really watching football when Scholes was probably at his peak. Like, I wasn't really young. I was too young to probably sort of acknowledge it. But I grew up with Steven Gerrard. He was Mr. Liverpool. He was like my idol. He was for years, the only good thing about Liverpool at times. He was the only sort of player there. You had him and Torres, which you still love watching. But I think overall player, I'd always prefer Gerrard, especially being a Liverpool fan. But you're never going to be able to agree. You're like, United fans always put Scholes, Chelsea fans always put Lampard, Liverpool fans always put Gerrard. That's just the way it is. So I'd start Gerrard, I'd bench Lampard, and I'd sell Scholes. And then moving on from Gerrard, Lampard, and Scholes, I got a bit of a fun one. As you've obviously been on Sky, I thought it'd be quite cool to ask you about people's punditry ability. So I'm going to ask you, would you start Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, or Michael Richards on purely their pundit ability, not their football ability?
Yeah, interesting. I was actually having a conversation with my mate about Gary Neville, the pundit, and obviously he's a great talker, he's a great speaker. He's got incredible experience to fall back on, wealth of knowledge, and the fact that he's a football owner himself, obviously it helps him in terms of speaking about issues off the pitch. But as a pundit, he's not necessarily my favourite. I really like Jamie Carragher. I know a lot of people don't, for whatever reason. I think you can tell that he watches a lot of football. He can recall stuff as well. So you know that he can kind of remember games from 10, 15 years ago. He loves it. And he's got strong opinions that I don't necessarily always agree with. But he has got strong opinions and he communicates them quite well. Michael Richards, he obviously brings great energy. I don't think he brings as much football insight as the other guys, but he brings really good energy. And when he does speak about stuff, he does speak about it with authority, and he's somebody that can hold pundits like Roy Keane to task. Yeah. So I do like the vibes that Micah brings, and he's just a great addition to Sky Sport punditry team. So I for those reasons, I would start Jamie Carragher, I would bench Michael Richards, and I'd sell Gary Neville. And I know a lot of people like Neville's a lot of people's favourites pundit. But I don't know. I kind of prefer what the other two bring personally. What about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with up until a point, to be fair, because I think I quite enjoy the combo of Neville and Carragher. I think they go really well together. So I think you've sort of got to keep them both there. As like one without the other is not quite as. But the two of them bounce off each other really well. Weirdly, like it shouldn't work, but they do. It's quite strange. And as you said, Mike Richards just brings like a lot of energy and a lot of good vibes. And obviously, his football's a bit more recent compared to the other two. Maybe he's a bit more up to date with it as such. And obviously, it's a completely different. The other two won. Well, Neville won however many league titles. Carragher didn't win quite as much, but he's got more of the maybe international, European to talk about compared to Richards and stuff. But obviously, Richards probably won more than Carragher, and Neville definitely won more than Carragher. So, but as you say, Carragher does obviously a lot of research, so he's able to sit there and go, "Oh, this happened in 2008. I remember this game. I remember this game. This happened to who? This happened to him." So that's always quite handy to listen to. So I'd start Jamie Carragher, I'd bench Gary Neville, and I'd sell Michael Richards just because maybe Richards' insight isn't quite as in depth as the other two. But it's only like his second season of doing it, I think, second, maybe third. Whereas the other two have been doing it for 6, 7, 8 years, if not more. Yeah. And it just comes in time. That's like, we had a guest speaker come in, Martin Keown, he was talking about it. He was saying it just takes time. He also knows how much he knows about football, but the amount of research he has to do, all the notes he has and stuff, it takes time to get used to it. And obviously it's all opinion based. So no, you're not going to please everyone on TV. If you say one player's bad, there's always going to be someone that thinks he's good. That's just what football is. It's opinions. But as long as they're able to back it up and put a bit of facts, I think it goes quite nicely, and they know what they're talking about then. So it's not just a load of nonsense coming out of their mouth and you just sat there like just listening.
100%. And like they're all great to listen to. They're all really good at their jobs, and they're all people that you kind of aspire to be like. It's difficult for people like myself and you who haven't played football to kind of give you the insight that they do. So when you hear an ex-pro talk about certain things, maybe the dynamic in the dressing room or certain tactical nuances that we wouldn't know because we haven't played the game at the highest level, it's always great to listen to, and I'm always appreciative of that information. It's just really what you fancy, how you like to digest your information. I like hearing Carragher talk about certain things, so he'd be my favorite pundit. And then Gary and Mike are less so, but they're all great pundits.
Yeah, Sunday League isn't quite the same as Premier League level, unfortunately. I can't quite compare it, otherwise I'd be all right. But as you say, we can't really be pundits because we've never played the game at that level anyway. But it's been a pleasure having you on the channel. I hope to be able to do this again at some point. All the links and stuff will be on the description down below if you want to shout out your podcast and explain about that.
Yeah, so I do a podcast called the We Talk Football Podcast. I do it with my lifelong friend Jamie, who's a West Ham fan for his sins. And we just talk football. It does what it says on the tin. We talk football, we have a laugh. On socials, on Instagram, it's at We Talk Football Podcast. On Twitter, it's WTF Podcast 90. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube as well. Just type in We Talk Football Podcast. So yeah, go and have a watch. If you like the content, like the videos, and subscribe to our channel. Yeah, thank you very much. For sure, definitely check out them videos. And it's been great speaking to you. It really has been. So up until the next video, thank you everyone for watching. Obviously, like and comment and all that sort of stuff. And I'm hoping to get some more guests coming in the next couple of weeks to do some more videos. So stay tuned for that. But thank you, Kweku, and see everyone next week.